I have to say, my reading lately has been spectacular. So many good books to tell you guys about. I cannot wait to tell you about these three. So let's get started. Happy Thursday. I hope you guys are having a fantastic week. It is time for another Read and Review. As I said, I have been having an amazing reading couple of months, loving so much of what I read. So I cannot wait to tell you guys about the three books that are in this video. I think this is Read and Review 21. I don't know. I have a few actually stowed away. So I've read over 70 books, I think, year to date so far. So let's get started. As always, get out your pen, get out your paper, get out your Goodreads, because I'm telling you right now, these three books are going to wind up on your TBR. And if you are so able, order them from your local independent bookstore or make sure that your library has a copy so you can get your hands on them as soon as possible. The first book that I'm going to tell you about is the novel Say by Lila Savage. I'm saying Lila. I'm not sure exactly if that's how she says it. Lila? This is out from, let me make sure I get this right. This is out from Knopf, and thank them very much for sending me this finished copy. I requested this book because I thought it was going to make me cry, and I was absolutely correct. This is the story of a young woman. Her name is Ella. She is almost 30 years old, and sort of at the beginning of the book we find out that she has made a career of being sort of, I don't want to say caretaker, but she keeps people company as they sort of pass away, as at their end of their lives they're going through terminal illness or treatments, and she comes in as sort of a caretaker. At the beginning of the book she is being interviewed to take care of a woman who is actually not technically at the end of her life. She has suffered a head trauma from an awful car accident, and her world is really deteriorating, and she is still functioning, but she can't communicate, she has only certain phrases, she doesn't know how to take care of herself, and all of the sort of aspects of being a person are sort of starting to fade away. She is hired by the woman's husband in order so that he can just have a bit of free time. He has retired early so that he can take care of his wife. There is an utter love between this man and his wife that will just warm your heart and also break your heart in the tragedy as he watches his wife slowly disappear. But that is only a portion of what this book is about. That is really what I thought when I dived into it, that was what I was getting with this book. But this really is a book that is a fantastic character study of Ella, a woman in her 30s trying to figure out who she is, who she wants to be, and how all of the dynamics of her life come together. The decision she's made, the decision she still needs to make, the relationship she has, and how she sort of formulates who she is as a person. She has a certain sense of distance to almost everybody in her life, even her long-term girlfriend, who we learn about their relationship in this book, and we also learn about the odd dynamic that is their relationship, and sort of how Ella's always sort of kept herself back, a step back. And we learn about Ella and her family, we learn about Ella and her friends, and we really learn about her. You know, I just did the literary fiction tag, and I really could have used this book as a study, like the question was about like a character study. This book definitely has that, but it's set in a world where we are watching her, Ella, our main character, take care of a woman whose life is sort of unraveling, but you don't know if she's aware of it because of, one, the perspective is totally from Ella's perspective, and two, the sort of the actions of her day to day lead you to have an incomplete understanding of what's really going on for this woman. I thought this book was brilliant. I don't know why more people are not reading it. I think that it has so much to say about relationships and taking care of people and love and all sorts of things, all sorts of things. And it is brilliantly written. I know that according to the acknowledgments that Lila Savage actually did take, worked as a caretaker for nearly a decade. So there's probably a bunch of her sort of personal experiences in this book. But I thought that this is a book by a debut author, by the way, that people need to pay attention to, because I really loved this. So that's Say by Lila Savage. This is out again by Knopf. The next book, I went totally different. I decided I need to read a little bit of middle grade. And so I read My Life as an Ice Cream Sandwich by Zoboi. This came out at the end of August. This is the ARC version. I got this at Book Expo America. I will be buying this one for my shelf because I absolutely loved this book. This is the story of Ebony Grace. She is a young girl. I think she's 10 or 11 when the book starts. She's from Huntsville, Alabama, and she is being sent to live with her father for some time in Harlem, New York. The reason is explained throughout the book, but something has happened in her family's personal life, her mother and her grandfather's life, that has a need for her to sort of go live with her father for a while to get away from what's going on. Her parents have been divorced. Ebony Grace has been raised sort of in this fantasy world inspired by her grandfather, who works for NASA in Huntsville, and she believes herself to be a member of Starfleet. She wants to be a captain, and her grandfather have created this whole entire world where they have a starship named Uhura, which is named after the character from the original Star Trek series, which is so clever. And what is great about this is that Ebony Grace has created this world as a defense mechanism, and she has an utter love for her grandfather in this science fiction space in which she inhabits. However, what this has done is it's sort of made her step back, and she fights to create relationships with people outside of her grandfather. She gets to Harlem, and her father lives in a very different part of the world than where she is used to. She is not used to the children. She is not used to the noise. She is not used to the city, and all of her defenses come up. And this is really about her coming to terms with life and change and the dynamics of interpersonal childhood relationships. She had a best friend that she knew in Harlem, and when she gets back there, she hasn't been there in a few years. Her friend has grown up and gone a different path, and Ebony Grace really struggles with that. But at all times, this book has sort of this lighthearted connection to this sci-fi world. I'm really interested to see what the final copy does, because there are sort of like comic book breaks where certain interactions turn into a comic book narrative, and especially if it's part of her imaginary world, it is just so well done. There were times when I really felt for Ebony Grace, and I just was like, my heart was so sad, because I've been this little girl in a lot of ways. I've been the person who's on the outside trying to figure out what people are saying and doing, and having sort of this world that I've created for myself as a block from the reality. And also, I've been the person who doesn't have any friends at one point or another, and really not understanding why people don't want to be part of your world, because you love your world so much. Also, you know how I am about a narrative between a grandfather or a grandmother and a child. Ebony Grace loves her grandfather, and she doesn't really know all that's going on. We learn that he has some flaws, but she utterly adores this man, and I love that narrative. I love that idea of our grandparents being an important part of who we are in the world we live in. I adored this little book. I just thought it was so good. Give it to so many people. And that's My Life as an Ice Cream Sandwich by Zoboi. She wrote Pride, which came out last year. If you guys remember, that was her retelling of the Pride and Prejudice story. And then she was also, if I can't remember what, she was shortlisted for the National Book Award for children's fiction. And I can't remember the title of that book. I apologize. But she's put out a book every year for the last few years that have been definitely worth our time. So that's My Life as an Ice Cream Sandwich by Ibi Zoboi. This is out from Dutton, and I adored it. You guys are going to see that book again because I'm going to be telling you all to buy it for Christmas for whoever is the middle grade reader and or YA reader in your life. Going from, first we were in the modern world, and then we went to middle grade, and now we're going to do some historical fiction with the excellent The Women of the Copper Country by Mary Doria Russell. Now, most people know Mary Doria Russell for writing The Sparrow, which is a fantastic science fiction book that came out in the 70s, and I have to imagine that Mary Doria Russell is ready to move on from being connected to that book, even though it is probably her most famous book, because she has written some amazing historical fiction since then. This book is the story of Calumet, Michigan, which is, and this is set right after, I want to say like 1913 or about. I can't remember the exact month or date, I apologize. But Calumet, Michigan is a city built and owned by a company called Calumet and Tekla, which is a copper mining conglomerate. They have built this town basically for all of the workers to live in, and all they do day in and day out is mine in the copper mines in Calumet, Michigan. However, things have become more and more dangerous. People are dying. They are trying to move to this single person drill system, which at the start of the book kills a man and is sort of really the impetus of everything that comes forward. In that we meet Annie Clements. Annie becomes sort of the voice of the union for these copper miners, and she leads them all on a strike against the company and as a member of the union in an attempt to get better work conditions, shorter work days, better pay. For a bunch of the people, a lot of the people working in the mine system are all immigrants to America and are really being taken advantage of. And she sort of starts this as sort of this, the book, and I think history will tell you, she's considered the Joan of Arc of Calumet County's union strike. And she becomes sort of the face of it. And all sorts of stuff happens. The company is run by a man named James McNaughton, who may be one of the worst villains I have ever read based on a true person in my entire life. Horrible human being. And what goes on? The start of the labor union, how strikes were brought down, where there were actually people hired to come in and break up strikes, and some of the stuff that they do. This book is full of tragedy. I'm going to say that right now. This book there are so many instances that will absolutely break your heart. And there is one part sort of towards the end where I had to put it down. The tragedy was so hard that I had to put it down to just take a moment. So I am going to tell you things happen to people, things happen to children. This is not a narrative that has no tragedy, so be ready for it. But it will teach you a lot because Mary Doria Russell does an immense amount of research. If I have to say that there is a small thing about this book that was problematic for me, is I feel like the first half of the book was a little bit over factual. There were times where I felt like the sentences or the descriptions went a little bit too much into detail. It kind of would lose the story to tell me the facts, and I would get a little bit off track. But I learned a ton, so that's a small critique, because once about halfway a point of the book, when things start to really put in motion, and Mary Doria Russell has created this world which you totally will know. You will know Calumet, Michigan. You will know the union. You will know the people. You will know the players. And once sort of the story and narrative takes over, I was there. I was with these people. I was with Annie as she, I don't want to give away anything, but as things happen to her, as things happen to people she is close to, as people decide what to do with the strike, there's so much that goes on in this book. And by the end of it, I was bawling my freaking eyes out. You guys, it's really, really good. And so that's The Women of the Copper Country by Mary Doria Russell. So that is 3 more books that I have read in the year of 2019. All three of these, absolutely worth your time, you guys. I will say, if you are fans of Our Souls at Night by Kent Haroff, that just sort of popped in my head as something that may be similar to this that you guys may like. I absolutely loved all three of these, and I highly recommend it makes it onto your TBR. As always, if you are a return subscriber, I thank you so very, very much. If you are new to my channel, I really hope that all of these books wind up on your TBR and you come back for more. As always, I continue to encourage you to shop locally, read globally, and until next time, I wish you happy reading, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!